Welcome to the Business of Hustling podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh Foote.
I'm your co-host, Ryan Foote.
And if you can't tell by our last names, we are brothers, and more importantly, the Foote brothers.
Yes, we are. So this week, guys, we're really excited about our podcast. Josh and I, as we mentioned last week, have had a lot of businesses together. We've done a lot of things on our own, but there's one business in particular that we've talked about and thought about a lot lately, and we wanted to discuss a little bit more about it today and what it is and how we came up with the idea and how we brought it to life and kind of the growth that we experienced and the lessons we learned. And so we're really excited that you guys are here to join us as we talk about this company this week.
Yeah, so particularly this company, his name was called Raid Menswear, and that is R-A-D-E. And a quick overview, we're going to dive into more depths of what the company was, but what it was a menswear accessory company. And so we sold ties and accessories like tie bars and pocket squares and things like that, mostly on our e-commerce site, but also several different outlets for sale. So pretty cool. And like Ryan said, very excited to have a postmortem about this business.
Yeah, totally. And that was one thing I think that was so, in the day and age that we live in where everyone shops online, it was kind of exciting for us to be able to have an e-commerce business and focus mostly only on selling directly to the consumer and not necessarily always going into retail or trying to figure out how to go into retail. And so it was able to kind of teach us a whole other aspect of business that was very new to us. And so I guess Josh was the one that came up with the idea and then called me about it and said, hey, do you want to come into it? So maybe Josh can tell us how he came up with the idea and go from there.
Well, there's not much to it. I was looking for different ideas, lots of different things, different friends that had different businesses in the fashion space. And one thing that I think, Ryan, is pretty apparent is we did not know a lot about fashion. And
not
still, after doing this, do not know a lot about fashion. One thing that we did know is we grew up going to church every Sunday wearing ties, and I can pick out a pretty good looking tie, I think. And so just looking at different ideas, looking at different low barriers of entries to different industries, and this is one of them, especially with the technology available to bring stuff over, import stuff from China these days.
Totally. And I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest aspects of our business was if you go into Macy's or Dillard's or any store that sells ties, you're going to pay 50, 60 and upwards of that for a tie that's quality. And so our big thing is we wanted to have quality ties that were good looking ties that people could get for a better price point, right around the $20 to $25 price point.
Absolutely, and that's something we did really well on is our ties specifically, and that was the mission from the beginning, was great high quality, same quality that were in Macy's that are $80, $100 ties, but we're selling them for way cheaper, and that's the kind of base we went on. And so there's a lot that played into it, but after looking at the numbers and the startup costs and the different space and the void in this industry for something like that, that's how we came up with the idea. And as we started, we were also looking for something. I was looking for something that could also coincide. I was a full-time student at the time that I could do on nights and weekends and not take up all my time during the days to leave those open. And probably about a week into it or so, a couple weeks into it, I had bounced some ideas off Ryan. And I remember one day we had a phone call and Ryan gave a lot of good feedback, and we just both, I think we both just thought this is a good match for the company.
Yeah, totally. And as Josh said, we were both going to school full time. We were both pretty busy, but we wanted to have another side hustle, something going on, just to bring in some extra money and to learn. We were both studying business, and so we just wanted to learn and put into action the things that we were studying and kind of see if our education was paying off or not. And so Josh called me, and I thought it was a good idea, and so we started Raid Menswear, and went from there. And so as Josh talked about, we focused mostly on, we started with ties, and then as we grew, as we got a bigger following and a more loyalty to our brand, we were able to branch out to pocket squares and to lapel pins, and just a few other cool little accessories that aren't super expensive that people buy, that we knew people would buy. And so the biggest barrier that we had was finding, as Josh said earlier, we don't really have any fashion sense. And so it was finding a supplier, someone that we could really rely on that could steer us in the right direction.
And that's one thing that we both loved about this industry, this company specifically, is getting those products available to us at a fairly decent price. And one thing we did as we looked for those products is turn to what was available to us at the time, which one of the biggest things to bring this brand to life was sourcing from China, specifically through Alibaba.com. Ryan, give a quick 2-second, what's Alibaba for our listeners?
You can buy anything you want for super cheap from people in China. It's basically, go to Alibaba.com and type in the most random thing, and you can find someone over there that will manufacture it for you. If you just buy one thing, it's going to be more expensive because you have to pay shipping, and their factory has to set up for it. But if you're buying in bulk and using them as your supplier, it's really good because you can get lower price point per item over there than here in the States, at least at the time. I don't know about now.
Yeah, we haven't imported from Alibaba for a little while. And this one is a little more in depth because a lot of times you can buy in bulk on Alibaba for your retail store or whatever, but we specifically had our own ties created and our own logos put on the ties and things like that to our specs, and so a little bit more challenging. But Ryan, I mean, a couple weeks from starting to look on Alibaba for supplier to actually having a finished mock-up product ready to go, and then a couple weeks after that to actually have the products in our hands. Is that about a fair estimate?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. And that's the hardest thing, is vetting the suppliers. There's so many on Alibaba, and I don't speak Chinese. You don't personally know them, and so you kind of have to go off of reviews, and the more you talk to them, you kind of get a better feel for, hey, they're willing to work with us or they're not, or and how, I don't even know. I mean, we ordered samples from multiple different suppliers and finally found one that we liked that we thought was the quality that we were looking for.
Yeah, and a big thing on that is the responsiveness. A lot of them, we've had a couple we found good quality, but they just were hard to get a hold of. So I think we had, 2 or 3 suppliers that we worked with that got back to us pretty quick.
Right, and that was a good thing too, is not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Is we were able to kind of have certain ties. We had a polyester tie made, like the knit ties, and those were made with one manufacturer, and then we had a silk tie made with someone else, and it was just because that was what their factory mostly did. And so it was nice to be able to kind of go back and forth and kind of almost use one against the other as far as getting a better deal on product and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It's good to have multiple suppliers in your basket, so we were able to go back and look and say, hey, these guys are doing it for, I don't know, $2 a ton. You guys are at $2.50. Well, I mean, what can you do? And and so it did give us some negotiating power. Although negotiating with Chinese is a little bit different than here in the States. It's just a different culture, which we could go on for a long time. There's lots of different books out there that you can read about the difference in culture and negotiating, but we're not going to talk about that here. But Ryan, talk about market research of what we did to design the ties, to bring them over. How did we price them? I mean, what kind of research went into? I mean, I know, but tell our audience, what kind of research went into this?
Yeah, so like I said, we went to church every Sunday, so I have quite a few ties in my closet, and we just go to Macy's, we go to Dillard's and just look around and find ties that we'd like, and then we'd send over the swatches to our supplier, and they would send us a sample, and we go from there. And so one of the things with Alibaba too that we forgot to mention is the more you buy, economies of scale, the lower the price point per unit. And so we had to buy in bulk as a startup. They're not willing to give you as good of a deal for buying only 100 ties. And so at first we had to buy a few, and unfortunately that kind of limited us because we could only do so many different patterns at first. And so we did our first run, and it was actually super beneficial because they were a success. We sold them, but it kind of helped us to narrow down our price point. We'd price them high, and then we'd try and do sales, and then we'd drop the price, and then the sales wouldn't work as well, or they would work a little bit better, but then we're losing money, or not losing money, but not making as much per item. And so just by starting with a few products, we were really able to focus in on what our competitors were doing, find other people in the market that was, that we were competing with, that were these smaller these smaller tie companies. And then we go from there, and then we said, hey, I think silk ties would do good. And we'd look at other companies and see what they were selling soak ties for, what the hot pattern was or color was. And then it just kept going. It was almost like a snowball effect. We'd start with a couple, and then we'd learn, and then we'd get some capital, and then we were able to purchase more, and then we get more capital, and we were able to purchase some more. And so that was one of the biggest things, that we were able to grow it organically and to really not invest too much into an unknown market. We were able to do the research as we went.
And one thing that you said that I love about this industry, it's not an unknown market, is all of our competitors. Some of our competitors are like Macy's and Dillard's, but that wasn't. People that are going to Macy's, they want to wear that name brand tie. We were competing with other small tie brands, and specifically in fashion, everything's out there, especially on social media. Their entire line, their designs, their team, their price points, and so it made market research a lot easier today using those. Look at Instagram alone, and their website was hugely important for us to be able to understand our market and understand where we were going with it.
Yeah, totally. And so after we got the product in, the next biggest step obviously was now getting it into the consumer's hand. We had the product and we needed a channel of distribution. So we went back and forth a little bit as far as, do we go retail? Do we go into these little boutiques around town and in neighboring towns and try and put our product in their stores? Or do we just try and sell them directly to consumer? And ultimately that's why we went just through the e-commerce direct to consumer. Is one, we wanted to learn, but also it cuts out that middleman. And so we were able to have even lower price points per unit. And so Josh was really good about finding, there's Shopify, there's BigCommerce, there's all these different host sites that will help you with your website, setting it up and everything. And so maybe Josh can explain a little bit about how we vetted the different sites and which one we wanted to use to host our website and what we learned from that.
Yeah, we looked at several different distribution websites to set up our e-commerce store, and I think that's the first place we went is to e-commerce, to have our own site, like Ryan said, and then in order to do that, we didn't have the capital or the need or want to go get a programmer and start everything by ourselves. So we went to one of these pre-made in a box companies. I think we actually used BigCommerce for that. Since then I've actually used Shopify, and I think I enjoy Shopify better, just better analytics, better support and different applications that work with it. But at the time we used BigCommerce, it was great. And so we just looked at the features, and one thing for us as a small business was looking at costs and looking at every penny we went to, and Shopify and BigCommerce were, I believe, very similar in price and offering at that price. And so I think the deciding factor is we have a good friend that was doing something on BigCommerce as well, and he gave it good reviews. And so we decided, hey, BigCommerce is the one for us, if I remember correctly. I think that's what put us over the edge.
I think so, yeah. I think we were between the two. And BigCommerce, it worked out well for us. And we got into an issue in the end when they started to raise prices because of competition, and it's normal. But I was, going back to the fact that we're trying to grow organically without really going into our banks and pulling more capital out and putting in more of the capital investment. We were able just to use that money left over the revenues to continue to purchase. And so BigCommerce kind of fit that model for us.
Absolutely, it was easy. And as far as I can remember, we only had one big problem, like Ryan said, towards the end with BigCommerce. And it wasn't raising their price. There was something else. And it was, I can't remember exactly what happened, but at the end, they ended up doing the right thing for us and making us whole. And so we had nothing but good things to say about them. And one thing about BigCommerce is they took care of all the pay-to-go website to exactly what we wanted. And they made it pretty easy for us. I'm on our website design, making it from this out of the box ready. But we didn't just sell on e-commerce. That was our main one that we went to. But we'll get into a couple different details about sales later. But Ryan, what other channels did we sell into?
Another really good thing for us is the town we lived in was a pretty good college town, and they always had pop-up shops and little events going on. So we'd purchase a booth and we'd have like a show special. And so that was really good for us. We'd go up to like the bigger city as well. And so, and we'll get into more details about this later. And then we would work with other companies that would kind of, like monthly subscriptions, or other companies that would sell like curated boxes, and we'd sell through them as well. But I think it really worked well for us to be able to sell directly to the consumer and not focus so much on retail. And plus, as college kids, as we mentioned earlier, it's just easier to sell directly to the consumer because you don't have to have a lot of retailers will order so much product, and then if it sells or if it doesn't, you're buying it back. And there's just a lot more money that's involved and a lot more transactions. And so through BigCommerce, we were able just to handle our transactions, handle our sales, and be able to cut the middleman out and ultimately sell at a lower price point.
For sure. And we actually looked at a couple retail boutiques like we talked about earlier, and for all those reasons, it just didn't make sense for us, at least at the time. I mean, maybe if we would have grown it and not sold it, which we'll talk about, maybe retail would have been another good step for us, but at the time it just wasn't. And so even though it was a small business that just had me and Ryan working at it, there's still quite a bit of operational items that we had to take care of on the daily, weekly, monthly.
Yeah, and I think, and with any business, I think the biggest thing, one thing, Josh and I are brothers, we think a lot alike, and so at first we were kind of just both doing everything, and then, so I think with any business, it's really important to define your roles and to really know, and that's kind of when we started to explode, is when Josh took over certain things, and I took over certain things, the different aspects of the company. Sorry to cut you off, Josh.
No, absolutely. That was a perfect segue I was going to talk about. Is having individual roles for what people are doing is so important. Because I think it came to a head when we both ended up posting something on Instagram, or I can't remember, something happened where we kind of made fools of ourselves a little bit. Not fools, but we did something over that we didn't need to do. And that's when we sat down and said, okay, let's break these off. And Ryan, one thing that Ryan did, which was awesome, is he really took an active part in all of our social media, our marketing, the website, front end and back end. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit more about those specific? I mean, those are extremely important. I mean, marketing is what drives a lot of sales. I mean, give us some insights on that.
Yeah, and so selling directly to the consumer, like we mentioned earlier, you have the product in hand, and you need to get it into into the consumer's hand, and then word of mouth and working with them. And so social media is an amazing tool. I mean, even companies that are huge, that are selling in all over the world in retail stores, they still have a presence in social media. And so we focused, at the time, it was mostly just Facebook and Instagram, more so Instagram. Facebook was up and coming, but they weren't as good of a platform to really have a good marketing. We had a page, we'd post to it. And even when we were doing Instagram, it's nothing like it was today, with all the analytics and stuff that you can have with a business profile. And so our main marketing came from social media. We'd focus a lot on Instagram, and generating content was one of the hardest things. And so actually the friend that referred us to BigCommerce, or said that's who they were using, he was really into photography and he knew quite a few people in the community we were in, because that was his home. Whereas Josh and I we were just students, and so we were visiting, and we weren't as connected or networked with as many people. And so he actually was able to get our product into other startups' hands. He's able to get into some bloggers, and we just kind of would focus in on different aspects. Okay, let's focus on different fashion bloggers, and we get our product in their hand, and then they would generate content. And so, and that's one thing, it was with Instagram and with social media, it's a constant. I mean, that's almost a full-time job, constantly going through, replying to people, trying to get your product out there. And then making sure that on the other side of it, that your website is ready to go, that when people come in, it has a good user interface. People can click through, they can find the product, they can buy it. And so I spent a lot of time on that, and Josh was very helpful. I mean, we had individual roles, but we kind of would cross over and help here or there.
Yeah, definitely carry over in everything. But I mean, I assume you would agree that it made it easier, because I had different roles than social media and the website and things like that. And being in front of people as much as you were, I think that made us really pop and find our strides, because you were able to focus on you could focus on social media and the website and sales, and knew that everything on the back end, like logistics, was going to be taken care of. And like you said, one thing that was so important is, especially in a small company, is there was a lot of carryover between both of us. It's not like Ryan took social media and then just cut everything else out. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth and, hey, what do we do on this? And working together, which was even more beneficial, that we could bounce ideas off and then Ryan could run with it and make it as best as it could be.
Yeah, totally. And so further on from that, you have the website, but then you have to make sure that the logistics are taken care of, that you have product coming in, that you know when you should be replenishing product, when you're almost out. And so that was one thing that Josh really focused in on and narrowed in on, and making sure that that aspect of the business was it was a well-oiled machine to make sure that we had the product that people were demanding. And so Josh was really good with Alibaba and the logistics, and I'll let him explain a little bit more about how he was able to nail that process down.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was at first just trial and error, like we talked about with Alibaba when we first started the podcast. But it was also a big part of it was, like we just said, it's not like Ryan ran with social media and I ran with Alibaba and we didn't talk to each other. I had to talk to Ryan about his social media and about what was hot in the market, so we could come together and create designs and things like that. And we had to work with our inventory, which me and Ryan were both working on, so we could work on our logistics when we need to get the products in and stuff like that. And on the same token, Ryan had to communicate with me on the logistics and vice versa. So it was really a synergistic relationship there to make the business as best as possible. And working with suppliers, it's finding who we need and how to make them the best that they can be for us in our applications. And same with the logistics, it's just finding what we need to do when we needed to do it and working together.
Totally. And I think one of the areas that we worked that crossed over the most was the financial aspect, the accounting. And so BigCommerce actually really does a good job of helping you to print out financial statements for your business, which allowed us to then kind of forecast. And that forecast helped me because it was able to let me focus in on our marketing efforts and how much money we had to do with that and how much we should reach out. And then it was able to help Josh also to know when he should reorder, to know how much product we have. And so that's another huge benefit of having one of those plug and play websites is they kind of handle all the accounting and all the financial aspects. And so you can track inventory levels, you can track sales, revenue, gross profit, net profit, all the different aspects of running a business.
Absolutely, and that was hugely important for us, is to have that built in so we didn't have to spend the time and money on that. And one thing that Ryan mentioned a little bit ago is marketing. And with a small company, especially focused on social media marketing and getting our product out into the hands directly, because it's direct-to-consumer business, especially something that was online where we didn't have big stores or billboards and things like that, is we really had to be careful with our marketing objectives and with our marketing dollars. And there were several different ways that we focused our marketing efforts. Or I like to call it branding, because we really were building a brand. We were trying to convert people to our brand. And one thing that Ryan touched on was social media, which was hugely, hugely important. It wasn't what it was today, but there were some other smaller things like flyers and cards for boxes and stuff. Ryan, tell us more about what else we did for marketing.
Yeah, so we would put flyers on, like I said, we were in a little college town, and so we just go put flyers on cars or hang them up on the different apartment stores. And actually, Josh decided to put them up on one door once, and we got a call from the owner, and they were a little upset. We didn't break any laws, they didn't have any soliciting signs or anything. But again, it was just a really good learning curve that, hey, make sure if you're going to put flyers up, you check with who it is. Not that we broke a law. He was super cool about it. He just said, hey, on my property, I would appreciate if you would just they had like a main area that they would post all their announcements, and so they didn't want things going out on the doors. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, but would I do it again? Maybe. We'll see. Probably not. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, so we did flyers. We'd have ambassadors. Like I said, we'd focus on like different fashion bloggers, and we'd work with them. We'd send them free product, and we'd say, hey, if we send you this product, would you mind taking pictures and posting them, and kind of giving us a solid review on your different social media platforms with a lot of followers. And then I think one of the biggest things that really helped us was networking, and this is all kind of combined into that, is really getting in and meeting people in our community, meeting people that were kind of in the same situation as us or in the same industry, not so much selling ties, but that were selling maybe watches or wallets or, a hat or just different things. And we were really working with them, and we'd kind of bounce ideas off of each other and collaborate and say, hey, what's working for you? What's not? Hey, we have this issue. And so we would network, and that it would actually ended up leading to one of our biggest and coolest things that we did. But yeah, I don't know if I missed anything, and we'll touch on that cool thing in a minute.
Yeah, no, I think you got everything. There's a lot of it was just getting product into the hands of people that had a following and making them ambassadors, for lack of a better word, and saying, hey, Raid Menswear is the place to be. Go get your stuff from them. And all of this that we've talked about is leading up into sales, because sales is what companies can survive on and what they also can die on. So let's focus on sales for a minute, Ryan. Obviously, our online sales channel, our e-commerce site, was our number one sales channels. We talked about booths at events, pop-up shops. But let's talk about that fun thing that you were just hinting at, which was a subscription box type of a sale. I'll let Ryan talk about that.
Yeah, and so basically what it was it was called Sprezza Box, and we were fortunate enough through our networking efforts to be able to get connected with the right people and kind of get in on the very beginning stage of this startup. And so, they're way more popular now. It's just a subscription box. You log in and you sign up for a 12-month program and 24, like the unlimited. I can't remember all the different payment options. And then you pay $25 or $30 a month, and you basically get a product from 4 or 5 different companies in a box each month delivered to your door. And so the company would actually curate these boxes to, they say, okay, this color tie, this pair of socks, this tie clip, this wallet, and these sunglasses all kind of go together because it's fall or it's summer and you're going to need sunglasses. And then in the fall, they would maybe do like a beanie or a scarf or just different men's fashion things. And so we had the opportunity to be featured in one of the boxes, and that was huge because they had a huge following. They had tons of customers, and so for us, it was a huge risk because we had to order so much product. We had put a lot of money on the line, but we knew that by getting in this box, our product would get into 10,000 people's hands, and we could run right with it, and it was perfect for sales, and then it drew a lot more people to wanting our product.
Absolutely. That was a huge thing especially for a small company like Raid was, is finding that sale and running with it. And up until that point, we had ordered several hundred ties at a time. We had sold hundreds of ties, but ordering 10,000 ties for this order was insanely and vastly different than anything we had done. I remember I was at the gym and Ryan said, hey, we might have the sale, and we kind of went into sales mode and did everything we could to make it, because that's a large chunk of money that was on the line, and it did. We had to change our thinking and our rules for a few weeks to get that order done. And Ryan, what were some of one of the things was working with our suppliers, because there was a deadline and getting those ties here. Do you remember that process very well?
Yeah, it was a very stressful time, and Josh actually, as we mentioned earlier, would work with the suppliers, and so he would stay up until 2 a.m. or through the middle of the night talking with the Chinese people, our suppliers, and really being able to negotiate those deals and stuff. And so it was just as Josh said, it was really good for us because it forced us to grow and kind of step out of our comfort zone. And I think ultimately that's what led to Raid's success, is because before that we'd have, we were doing sales, we were selling them here and there, but it was comfortable for us. We weren't really pushing, we were growing, but it wasn't exponential. It was a couple more ties each week than we were the previous week. And it was really easy for us to forecast, what our sales would be in 2 months, what product we needed to order, how much money we needed to have, what marketing tactics we would use. And so this one actually, it just kind of, so we met a guy that worked, that had his own little startup doing socks, and he was actually featured in one of these boxes, and he got to know the owner of them pretty well, and he said, hey, would this be something you guys are interested in? It's really good for small companies or startups because it kind of gets your name out there. It's free marketing to a degree. We still put a lot of money into it. And Josh and I think we kind of went back and forth a little bit. Like, do we do this? Do we not? Is it worth it?
Yeah, it was a couple of days of that.
Yeah, and because it could have sunk us pretty bad. There's thousands and thousands of dollars on the line that if for whatever reason we got the ties and they were defective or whatever, all that money's wasted. And so I got in touch with the owner of that other company, and we started working on a deal. And I think we were in was it a spring box? I think it was like.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was like one of the months that started to get warmer. And so we needed to have a brighter color. And brighter colors are always harder because what they look like versus on a little swatch versus what they look like on a whole tie was hard. And so Josh would really work. We finally nailed down a tie. We had two different designs that they wanted in the boxes. And then I gave it to Josh and said, make this happen. And he went back to our supplier. And I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't wasn't our main supplier. Weren't they kind of being a stink and weren't really working with us? And they were still trying to charge us a higher. I don't remember, but I remember you navigated through that. And so maybe go ahead and talk about that whole process of ordering those ties and getting them.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was great to have Ryan because Ryan's the one who went and sold the order and then did all that. So I was able to just sit in the background and do my thing. But for a couple weeks, I changed my schedule and I pretty much stayed up all night and Ryan stayed up with me several nights. And it was tens of thousands of dollars on the line that could have sunk us, the business and both personally. So it was kind of a scary thing to go into, but the upside was definitely well worth it. But yeah, working with the suppliers, as we had previously ordered probably about 100 ties at a time from them, and so we were doing somewhat decent sized orders, but I mean, for their factory capacity, not at all. And so when we came to them and said we need 10,000 ties, and I can't remember the time frame, a couple weeks, a month, I think a couple months is what it was. They were having some issues with us getting the price point to where we needed. They're still trying to charge us about the same price as us if we ordered 100 ties at a time versus 10,000. And so that was one of the hardest things ever because we couldn't really switch suppliers because we couldn't vet them first. And so it took about a week and a half, but we finally came to a price that we were comfortable on and that made both parties happy. And we ordered, and I remember Ryan and me would constantly be monitoring the order. We'd ask for pictures every day to see where we're at because we had never done something this big. And
they required 50% of the cash up front. And so we had to fork up a big chunk of change up front and then just hope that they would fulfill it like we needed them to. Anyway.
Exactly. That's a good point. I think we were both we had worked with them before, but had put a couple $100 on the line, but putting tens of thousands on the line without ever having met these people in person was kind of scary and challenging for us. And then once they were built, we didn't even send them here. We sent them to the company in New York City. So it was a fun but hectic time, and another aspect of that too is we had to get like an import broker because with a couple hundred ties we'd pay tax on it and stuff, but we didn't have to pay the import tax because we weren't over the certain threshold. But with that, it put us way over, and so we needed to find a broker that could be able to handle making sure that the product got in from the ship into the port into the right people's hands to ship to the factory of this box. And so it was just a huge learning curve. And ultimately, luckily, through the networking efforts that we made, we were able to find other guys that had come into that same port that our product was being shipped to. And they were able to refer us a couple different brokers. And we were able to get through that as well. Exactly. And an order like that is, we had done it, but it was such a huge learning curve. And once we got it like Ryan said, once we got it, all the ties ready, I can't remember where they were in transport, but we realized, hey, these aren't going to the factory or to the shipping point, the destination. They're just going to the port. And so once we thought everything was in the bag, it was something else that we had to deal with. But in the end, Ryan, was the order worth it for us?
It totally was. It was a springboard into really all the success that we had. We had success we were learning before, but this was just it was exponential growth, it was exponential learning. We really took off after that because now there was, and that box did a really good job of networking with a lot of bloggers as well who would actually get free boxes. And so then we all of a sudden were getting a lot more people coming to our website. We were having a lot more traffic through our social media. And all of a sudden we became our products became more popular and people started wanting to get more and more. And it was awesome because we had these relationships with our factory. We had relationships with different bloggers. We had it with different business owners. And so we were able to really just kind of take off after that. And it was a lot of fun. And not saying that after that it was all smooth, but we had ironed out a lot of the mess beforehand with something this big, that when we came back down to, now we were ordering 200 ties at a time, it was a lot more of a simple process to get them here. And then we'd run into bumps. So no, we need to have more product, or, just different things that would come up.
For sure. And we were able to run with that momentum. But Ryan, do you think if I can't remember how long we were in business before we got that order, but do you think if right when we got into business, we got that order, even if we were able to fulfill it, we had all the momentum, do you think we would have been able to keep that momentum? Or do you think we would have kind of died down a little bit because we didn't have the systems and the know-how and know-how in place to run with the momentum like we did later on? What do you think?
Yeah, totally. And I think too, I think it came at a really good time because Josh and I were looking to expand the business. We're trying to find different ways. And that's when we started to think, maybe we should get into some of these smaller boutiques around town and kind of go the retail route. And then this hit. And I think if it would have hit, 3 months earlier or even a year earlier, I think it might have sunk us. One of the biggest things is too much work, or not enough work can make a business go out of business, and too much work can also make a business go out of business. If you don't have the means, the systems, the operations in place, you won't be able to perform, and you'll spend all your money, you'll spend all your resources trying to make something happen, and ultimately it runs you out of business. And so I think it was the right time for us to be able to kind of take off and hit the ground running with it.
Absolutely. And everything we had done up to that point prepared us for that sale. And for me, at least personally, and I think Ryan too, is I've been able to take that momentum and that learning curve and everything we learned through building Raid and ultimately apply it to several other businesses that we've been involved in, which was pretty cool.
It really was. And it just took off, and we learned so much, and Raid, it ended up being a success. Before that, it was a success, but it wasn't, it wasn't something that we go be like, oh yeah, we started this and it was super cool. It was there,
more of a hobby.
But now it was like, with one order, we were able to sell that many ties. And don't get me wrong, you have these big fashion companies that are selling 10,000 ties a day, no problem. But for a little startup like us, and as college kids, we didn't become millionaires off of it. We weren't super rich, but it was just a good side thing that I still use a lot of the aspects in my businesses today that we learned back then. And I think Josh has done a lot more e-commerce related things than I have. And my guess is that the things that we learned with Raid, he's carried over and developed further and used more tools necessary to kind of expand his businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so much carryover from just learning and real world. And the other thing is about, we learned a lot about negotiating and working with people and lots of different stuff, which is so helpful going forward. And ultimately, like we said, Raid kind of took off after that. We did it for a while, and after a little while, we several more months later, and I can't remember how long it was, but we kind of got together and said, this is great, we love it, but is this what we want to do for the rest of our lives? We're at a turning point where we could say we could go and spend a lot more money in inventory and systems, or we can kind of sell it as it is, let somebody else do it, and go and move on to our next ventures. And that's kind of where we decided to move on. I think that's a pretty fair analysis of how that happened. What do you got?
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the hardest things too is Josh and I were both super emotionally attached to it because we did have such good success. We were growing it, and I wouldn't say that necessarily our ties were changing lives. Someone didn't buy a tie and all of a sudden their life was made, but it was fun. And we got a lot of good feedback from our customers. Hey, we love your ties. We're so glad that they're cheaper. And actually, it was pretty funny. There's another company in the same town that we started that copied us. We started and they kind of saw our success and they copied our idea. Anyway, so there's more people come to the table with ideas that were similar to ours and wanting to bring ties and stuff. And so it was hard to kind of let go of it. But I was going to school full time and I had other things that I was working on. And Josh was, I think, actually getting ready to move to a different city. because he was done with school. And it just got to the point where it's like, do we want to keep going with this? It's a success. It's great. Or, do we exit out of it and sell it, make some good money from the sell, and then use that money to invest in other things and to start other things. And that's what we ultimately did. And so I'll let Josh kind of talk a little bit about how we sold it and how we found our buyer and go into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing is we talked about selling for probably several conversations that were long over several months because we were so emotionally attached to it. But once we made the decision, I think we were both pretty jazzed about it.
But it also wasn't, we didn't just like put it out there and say we want to sell it. We wanted to make sure that someone had the same ideas and beliefs as us and would take it, and it would be a success for them. Not everyone not everyone has the same ideas, and there's this business that's up and running. Let me just buy it and step into it. So it took some time to find someone that had the same beliefs and ideas as ours.
Exactly, especially with it being at a turning point and still requiring a lot of work as a little business. And so we did a lot of networking, trying to find the right buyer for it. Had talked to a couple different people, and some people were interested and wasn't. I had a buddy that was super interested in it, who actually almost purchased it. And I can't remember, something happened where he stepped out. I think he got married and they ended up going a different direction with things. And finally what happened is there's a student from the college we were at who was in business as well, or working on his business degree, and through networking heard about the opportunity, and we got a hold of him, and he had the same vision for it that we did, and wanted to go places and not just fester out. And so we sold it to this college kid that worked out well, and I haven't checked in on it in a while. I don't know exactly where it's at right now. I haven't seen a huge social media presence on it, but I'm sure he's still kicking away at it. But it was a great learning opportunity. We made some money and had fun doing it, and it was a good thing for us.
Yeah,
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, totally. And touching back, we didn't start it with the hopes of selling it or hey, we could build this stuff and then sell it in a couple of years and make a ton of money. It was more of, we wanted to grow it organically, we wanted to learn, and then when the opportunity presented itself to sell it, it was the right timing, and I don't want to say everything's a coincidence, but timing is everything with business. If you jump too soon, you'll miss it, and if you jump too late, you've missed it as well. And so you really just need to just kind of read the market and be dynamic. Don't be afraid to take some risk, but also make sure that they're calculated risks. And so it really just worked out well for us to be able to sell and to learn a ton.
Absolutely. Great wrap up. Hey, Ryan, do you read?
Occasionally.
Do you like business?
Oh, yeah.
All right, give me your best or your favorite business book you've read, or one of the top.
I'd say Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I know that's a pretty cliche answer for business books or finance books, but it takes the money in a lot of different things because it gets you thinking in a different way than you normally would about money, and how kind of what we talked about today is growing organically and seeing that your money is working for you and not a burden for you. And so making sure that everything you have in your life is producing something for you and not causing you to either pay more or to lose more. So I'd go with that book this week. Josh, what about you?
I like business books a lot. I read a lot of them. One of them that I've read lately is called Capital Gains by Chip Carter Gaines, who's the dude off of Fixer Upper, I think is the show called. He's pretty famous on TV now. I don't know. Anyway, he has a book about all of his different business ideas up until him kind of taking off. And one thing I like about it is it's very business oriented, but it also brings values and family into it. And he's just honest with people. He's not trying to put himself on a pedestal. He just says, this is what it is. Here's all the mistakes I've made. Here's the good things I've done. And through it thick and thin, here's the most important things, which is God and family and having these values, which I really appreciate is a book that entails all those things. That's my choice lately. But there's so many good business books out there.
I agree. And at the end of the day, business is supposed to be fun. It obviously is stressful at times. It can weigh down. But if you're not having fun doing it, then why are you doing it? Make the most out of your life. Focus in on what makes you happy and go with it.
Exactly. And just work hard every time. Well, thank you for listening, guys. This has been
appreciate it.
Episode 2 of the Business of Hustling podcast. We'll see you next time.